December 19th, 1944, 08:20 hours, near Malmedy, Belgium. Obergefreiter Klaus Richter crouched in the snow-filled foxhole, his stomach cramping with hunger as he watched American supply trucks burning in the valley below. His unit, what remained of the 12th SS Panzer Division's infantry battalion, had overrun an American supply depot during the opening days of the Ardennes offensive, capturing vehicles, ammunition, and something Richter hadn't seen in months: food. Mountains of it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "Mein God," whispered Grenadier Hans Weber, staring at the wooden crates stacked beside the road. "How much food do the Americans carry?" What Obergefreiter Richter and his starving comrades discovered in those captured supply dumps would shatter their belief that Germany could win the war more completely than any tank battle or artillery barrage. Inside those crates were 10,000 K-ration boxes, compact, waterproof packages containing more calories, nutrition, and variety than most German soldiers had seen in a year. Within hours, as hungry German infantry tore into the American rations, the terrible mathematical reality of industrial warfare would become impossible to ignore. A nation that could feed its soldiers this abundantly while fighting on 3 continents possessed resources that Germany simply could not match. Richter had been fighting since 1941, surviving the Eastern Front's frozen hell, the retreat through Poland, and now this desperate winter offensive in Belgium. At 24, he looked 40, his face gaunt, cheekbones prominent beneath sunken eyes, and his uniform hanging loose on a frame that had lost 15 kilograms since June. He was, by German standards in December 1944, in relatively good condition. The battalion had received no hot meals in 4 days. Their official ration that morning consisted of 200 grams of black bread, made with sawdust filler to extend flour supplies, a thin slice of ersatz sausage containing more grain than meat, and ersatz coffee made from roasted acorns. Total caloric value, approximately 900 calories, less than half what a soldier engaged in winter combat required. "Open the crates," ordered Oberfeldwebel Friedrich Bauer, the company's senior NCO. "Let's see what the Americans eat." What Obergefreiter Richter and his starving comrades discovered in those captured supply dumps would shatter their belief that Germany could win the war more completely than any tank battle or artillery barrage. Inside those crates were 10,000 K-ration boxes, compact, waterproof packages containing more calories, nutrition, and variety than most German soldiers had seen in a year. Weber pried open a can labeled ham and eggs with his trench knife. The smell that escaped made his eyes water. Actual meat, preserved in gelatin with visible chunks of egg. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen real eggs. "Do they feed this to regular soldiers?" Weber asked in disbelief. "Not officers, not special units, regular infantry?" Bauer was reading the production information stamped on the box. Packed May 1944, Wrigley Company, Chicago, Illinois. He did the mental calculation. These rations were 7 months old, and they looked fresher than anything the Wehrmacht had issued in the past year. Richter tore open a chocolate bar. Actual chocolate, not the carob substitute German rations sometimes included. The taste exploded across his tongue, rich and sweet with real sugar and cocoa. He'd forgotten what real chocolate tasted like. "There's cigarettes too," another soldier called out, holding up small packs of American cigarettes. 4 in each ration? They give their soldiers 4 cigarettes per meal? The company distributed the captured rations among 140 men. There were enough K-rations to give each soldier 70 meals, more food than most had consumed in the previous month. As they ate, mechanically at first, and then with increasing emotion, a terrible understanding began to dawn. To understand the psychological impact of discovering American rations in December 1944, one must understand the confidence with which German soldiers had ended the war in 1939. Nazi propaganda had repeatedly emphasized Germany's agricultural self-sufficiency and superior organization. The conquest of Poland, France, and Western Russia was supposed to create Lebensraum, living space, that would make Germany the breadbasket of Europe. German soldiers in 1940-41 ate well, their rations including fresh meat, butter, cheese, bread, and vegetables. Unteroffizier Hermann Vogel, writing home from France in July 1940, captured the early war confidence. "We eat better as soldiers than most of us did as civilians. 3 hot meals daily, meat 6 times per week, fresh bread. The French wine is excellent. We take what we want. The Führer has organized everything perfectly. Germany will never go hungry again." The official Wehrmacht daily ration in 1940 provided approximately 3,600 calories, adequate for soldiers engaged in combat operations. The ration included 750 grams of bread, 136 grams of meat, 25 grams of butter, 25 grams of cheese, and various other components. Quality varied, but quantity was generally sufficient. By comparison, the British Army in 1940 issued approximately 3,200 calories daily, while the Red Army's ration, when fully issued, provided about 3,450 calories. The German soldier was, by the standards of 1940, adequately fed. But the mathematics of industrial warfare were already working against Germany. The Reich's agricultural production was insufficient for its population even in peacetime. Germany had imported 20% of its food before the war. The British blockade, the demands of feeding occupation troops across Europe, and the catastrophic failure to conquer the Soviet Union quickly turned adequate nutrition into a distant memory.
The turning point came in winter 1942-43 during the disaster at Stalingrad. Gefreiter Otto Brenner, serving with the 6th Army, described the collapse in his diary recovered after the surrender. November 1942. Rations have been reduced twice this month. We now receive 300 grams of bread, down from 600. Meat has been replaced with horse meat from dead cavalry mounts. The horses have been dead for days when we butcher them. The taste is indescribable. Many men have dysentery. December 1942. No bread for 3 days. We received 100 grams of dried peas and a small amount of grain. Some men are eating the grain uncooked. Their stomachs cannot digest it. 2 men in my company died after eating raw grain that swelled in their intestines. The cold requires 5,000 calories per day to maintain body temperature. We receive perhaps 800. January 1943. Men are eating anything. I saw soldiers scraping meat from horse bones that have been boiled 5 times already. Others are eating leather boots after boiling them soft. The realization has settled over the army. We are starving to death, and no relief is coming. Stalingrad was an extreme case, but it revealed the Wehrmacht's fundamental logistical weakness. German supply lines stretched across 1,000 miles of Russian territory couldn't maintain food deliveries adequate for sustained operations. Soldiers began each campaign well-fed and ended it starving. By mid-1943, even units not encircled faced chronic food shortages. Obergefreiter Ludwig Mohn, serving in Italy, wrote home in August 1943, "The rations barely sustain life. We receive 1 hot meal daily, thin soup with a few potatoes and occasionally a small piece of meat. Breakfast is 150 grams of bread and ersatz coffee. Dinner is nothing. I've lost 12 kilograms since March. My uniform hangs on me. When I look at the other men, I see walking skeletons." The Wehrmacht attempted to compensate through local requisitioning, a euphemism for organized theft from occupied populations. In France, Italy, Poland, and Russia, German soldiers seized food from civilians, creating famines in occupied territories while barely maintaining their own nutrition. But by 1944, even systematic theft couldn't feed the Wehrmacht adequately. The occupied territories had been stripped bare. Transportation networks were collapsing under Allied bombing. Agricultural production in Germany itself was falling, as farm workers were conscripted and chemical fertilizer production diverted to explosives. The official Wehrmacht ration in December 1944 provided approximately 2,100 calories, barely half of 1940 levels, and completely inadequate for winter combat operations. Worse, the official ration was rarely fully issued. Frontline units frequently received 60 to 70% of official allocations, meaning soldiers survived on 1,200 to 1,500 calories daily while burning 4,000 to 5,000 calories in combat.
During the first 3 days of the Ardennes offensive, advancing German units overran multiple American supply dumps. The psychological impact on German soldiers was immediate and devastating. Gefreiter Franz Hartmann, 276th Volksgrenadier Division, described his reaction in a letter written to his wife before his death in January 1945. "We captured an American supply depot yesterday. I cannot describe the abundance. Crates of rations stacked higher than houses. Cigarettes by the thousands of cartons. Coffee, real coffee, not the acorn swill we drink. Chocolate bars in such quantities we couldn't carry them all." But what broke my spirit was the realization this was a supply dump for perhaps 500 American soldiers for 1 week. We captured enough food to feed our entire division for a month, and the Americans had abandoned it, didn't even try to destroy it because they knew they could replace it immediately. My company commander opened a K-ration and began to weep, not from joy at having food, but from despair at understanding what it represented. The Americans feed every soldier this abundantly every day while we starve. They can afford to abandon warehouses full of food because they have unlimited more. We are fighting a nation that considers this abundance normal. Oberfeldwebel Bauer, Richter's company sergeant, conducted a methodical inventory of captured supplies. His report, found in divisional archives after the war, quantified the disparity. Captured American supply dump, December 19, 1944. 10,347 K-ration boxes, individual meals. 2,400 D-ration chocolate bars, emergency rations. 847 cartons of cigarettes, 10 packs per carton. 312 cases of instant coffee, 189 cases of sugar, medical supplies including vitamins, first aid kits, bandages, personal hygiene items, soap, toothpaste, razors, toilet paper. This represents more food than our entire battalion has received in the previous 2 months. The Americans abandoned it without attempting destruction, suggesting they considered it expendable. Intelligence indicates this was a standard 3-day supply dump for one American infantry battalion, approximately 800 men. Psychological impact on troops severe. Many men openly question how Germany can win against an enemy with such overwhelming material superiority. Request guidance on appropriate response to defeatist sentiment, that is, in this case, based on undeniable mathematical reality. As German soldiers consumed American rations, the psychological impact deepened beyond the immediate relief of full stomachs. The K-rations represented a material reality that Nazi propaganda could not explain away. Richter sat in his foxhole, mechanically eating his 3rd K-ration of the day, more food than he'd consumed in the previous 3 days combined, and felt his understanding of the war fundamentally shift. "These rations were packaged 7 months ago," he said to Weber. "The Americans packed these in May, shipped them across the Atlantic Ocean, stored them in England, brought them across the Channel, transported them to Belgium, and considered them so expendable that they didn't even destroy them when retreating. "We're eating rations better than what German officers receive," Weber replied. "Regular American infantry eat this every day, every single day, while we starve." The contrast with German rations was impossible to ignore. A Wehrmacht soldier's daily ration in December 1944 officially consisted of 700 grams bread, actually received 300 to 400 grams, usually mixed with sawdust or potato flour, 120 grams meat, actually received 40 to 60 grams, often spoiled, 25 grams cheese, rarely issued, 25 grams butter, substituted with margarine, often rancid, ersatz coffee made from roasted acorns or chicory, no cigarettes, tobacco diverted to priority units, no chocolate, no supplementary items. The actual received ration provided perhaps 1,200 calories, one-third of what an American soldier received as his baseline emergency ration. Unteroffizier Stefan Koch, a veteran of 3 years on the Eastern Front, articulated what many were thinking during a conversation recorded by another soldier. "I have been telling myself that Germany's industrial inferiority doesn't matter because we have superior soldiers and tactics. I have believed that German efficiency compensates for material shortage. These rations prove I have been lying to myself. The Americans don't have superior soldiers, we've beaten their infantry in nearly every engagement, but they have something we cannot counter: unlimited material. They can feed every soldier abundantly. They can equip every soldier completely. They can replace every loss immediately. Look at this ration. It contains cigarettes, 4 per meal, 12 per day. We haven't seen cigarettes in weeks. It contains real coffee. We drink roasted acorns. It contains chocolate, fruit bars, chewing gum, luxuries we haven't seen in years. And the Americans consider this emergency ration the worst they eat. How do we win against this? Our most optimistic scenario is we push the Americans back 50 kilometers, exhaust our supplies, and then they counterattack with fresh divisions, unlimited ammunition, and soldiers who are well-fed and equipped. We cannot win this war. The mathematics don't work." The K-rations that broke German morale represented an industrial and agricultural achievement that was itself a weapon of war. American food production during World War II operated at scales that staggered analysis. In 1944, American agriculture produced 149 million tons of grain, compared to Germany's 23 million tons, 10.4 billion pounds of meat, compared to Germany's 2.1 billion pounds, 119 billion pounds of milk, compared to Germany's 29 billion pounds, 5.4 million tons of sugar, Germany 1.2 million tons. But production was only part of the equation. American industry had developed preservation, packaging, and logistics systems that could deliver this abundance to soldiers fighting on 5 continents. The Wrigley Company alone, one of 47 contractors producing K-rations, operated 6 factories running 24 hours daily, producing 2.3 million rations weekly. Each ration passed through automated packaging lines that sealed, inspected, and boxed meals at rates German food processing couldn't approach. Dr. Robert Chen, food scientist with the Quartermaster Corps, explained the technical achievement in a 1944 technical bulletin. The K-ration solves 3 problems simultaneously: nutrition, preservation, and logistics. Each component is selected for stability. We cannot have spoilage rates above 0.1% given the logistics of worldwide distribution. Each component must provide maximum nutrition for unit weight. We're shipping this food across oceans. Each component must require no preparation. Soldiers eat these under combat conditions. The canned meat products alone represent significant technical achievement.
We've developed canning processes that kill all bacterial spores, preventing botulism and spoilage indefinitely. German canning technology cannot achieve this reliability, which is why their soldiers experience frequent food poisoning from spoiled rations. The packaging uses wax-coated paperboard that repels water while remaining light and compact. The entire ration weighs 32 ounces but provides 3,000 calories. German rations providing equivalent calories would weigh twice as much and spoil within weeks. More devastatingly for German morale, American soldiers complained about K-rations. They were considered monotonous, unappetizing emergency rations that soldiers tolerated but disliked. The American military conducted surveys showing that K-rations were the least popular meal option, with soldiers preferring fresh rations or even C-rations. German soldiers who learned this, that Americans considered K-rations barely adequate, experienced psychological shock. The rations that seemed luxurious to starving Wehrmacht soldiers were viewed by Americans as minimum acceptable quality.
News of the captured American rations spread through German forces faster than official communications. Soldiers who had eaten K-rations described them to comrades in other units. The psychological impact rippled through the Wehrmacht. Grenadier Paul Fischer, 9th Panzer Division, wrote in his diary after hearing about the captured supplies. Today, spoke with soldiers from 12 SS who captured American supplies. They described rations that sound like peacetime civilian food: meat, chocolate, real coffee, cigarettes. They said Americans feed this to every soldier, every day, and abandon warehouses full when retreating. If this is true, and I have no reason to doubt these men, then everything we've been told is a lie. We are not losing because of betrayal or bad luck. We are losing because the Americans have 20 times our production capacity. They feed their soldiers abundantly because they can. We starve because we must. I think about my family in Cologne. They receive 1,200 calories daily on ration cards. The city has no butter, no meat, no coffee. Meanwhile, American soldiers eat ham, eggs, and chocolate in the field and abandon supplies they cannot carry. This war is lost. Not next month or next year. It's already lost. We're just dying slowly while refusing to admit mathematical reality. The Wehrmacht's military police reported increasing defeatist sentiment directly tied to knowledge of American supply abundance. A December 28 report from the 5th Panzer Army's military police noted, "Morale, discipline deteriorating rapidly. Primary cause, soldiers' exposure to captured American supplies and subsequent understanding of material disparity. Men openly state that Germany cannot win against enemy that feeds soldiers better than German civilians eat. Traditional motivational approaches ineffective. Cannot convince starving men that material superiority doesn't matter when they've personally handled evidence of that superiority. Cannot claim American abundance is propaganda when soldiers have eaten American rations themselves. Recommend immediate confiscation of all captured American supplies before morale collapse spreads beyond combat units to rear echelons. However, this may already be too late. Word has spread throughout Army Group B."
Behind the K-rations lay production statistics that quantified Germany's hopeless position. In 1944, the United States produced food for military, 153 million K-rations, sufficient to feed 140,000 soldiers for 1 year on K-rations alone. 500 million C-rations, larger canned meals. 138 million D-rations, emergency chocolate bars. 2.3 billion pounds of canned meat, and fresh rations for millions of soldiers when in garrison or rear areas. Total food production, American agriculture produced enough food to feed its 140 million civilians adequately, supply 12 million military personnel with full rations, and export 15 million tons of food to Britain and the Soviet Union under Lend-Lease. By comparison, Germany in 1944 produced barely enough food to maintain its civilian population at near-starvation levels and could not adequately feed its military. German soldiers on all fronts experienced chronic food shortages, while American soldiers on all fronts ate adequately or abundantly. The disparity extended beyond food to every category of supply. American soldiers received fresh uniforms every 60 days, new boots every 90 days, unlimited ammunition for training, personal hygiene items as standard issue, medical care including vitamin supplements and dental work, mail delivery that reached frontline troops within 10 days, hot showers and laundry service even in combat zones. German soldiers by late 1944 received replacement uniforms only when old ones were destroyed, boots that were never replaced until completely unwearable, minimal ammunition even for combat, training ammunition non-existent, no hygiene items beyond basic soap when available, medical care limited to emergency treatment, mail delivery sporadic, often months delayed. No bathing facilities except rivers and streams. Obergefreiter Richter, finishing his 4th day of eating American K-rations, understood something that German high command refused to acknowledge. Industrial warfare was not won through courage, tactics, or superior weapons. It was won through production capacity and logistic systems that could deliver overwhelming material to soldiers wherever they fought. Germany had lost that race in 1940, before it even understood the race had begun.
By early January 1945, as the Ardennes offensive collapsed, German soldiers who had consumed American rations began returning to rear areas and writing letters home. The psychological damage spread beyond combat units to the German civilian population. Gefreiter Hans Weber, writing to his wife in Hamburg on January 8, 1945, articulated what tens of thousands of soldiers were communicating. Liebste Maria, I must tell you something that will disturb you, but you deserve truth. During the offensive, we captured American supplies. The food these enemy soldiers carry as standard ration is better than what you receive on your civilian ration card. Better than what I have eaten in 2 years of military service. Each American soldier receives chocolate, real coffee, canned meat with visible meat chunks, cigarettes, and even chewing gum, daily. Not as rewards or special occasions, but as normal ration. They can afford to abandon warehouses full of this food because they produce unlimited more. I think of you standing in ration lines for hours to receive 200 grams of bread mixed with sawdust. I think of our children who have forgotten what chocolate tastes like. Meanwhile, American soldiers eat chocolate every day and complain that their rations are boring. This war is lost, Maria, not because our soldiers lack courage or our weapons are inferior, but because we are fighting a nation that produces food, ammunition, and equipment at scales we cannot imagine. Please begin making plans for after the defeat. It is coming, whether we admit it or not. Wehrmacht censors intercepted thousands of similar letters in January-February 1945. A Gestapo report from February 14th noted with alarm, soldiers returning from Ardennes offensive are systematically undermining home front morale through detailed descriptions of captured American supplies. These accounts are having greater negative impact on civilian morale than Allied propaganda. Common themes in intercepted correspondence: American soldiers receive abundant food while German civilians and soldiers starve. American production capacity is unlimited. Germany cannot win against such material superiority. Families should prepare for defeat. Recommend immediate suppression of these communications. However, given the volume, estimated 40,000+ letters per week containing defeatist content related to American supply abundance, complete suppression is impossible. The knowledge has already spread too widely. German civilians reading letters from soldier relatives describing American K-rations
experienced their own moment of psychological collapse. The Nazi regime had maintained for years that civilian sacrifices were necessary because the military required all available resources. The revelation that enemy soldiers ate better than German civilians while American civilians lived in prosperity destroyed this narrative. Frau Elisabeth Richter, Klaus Richter's mother living in Cologne, 1945, wrote in her diary on January 23, 1945, "Klaus's letter arrived today. He described capturing American food supplies, chocolate, coffee, meat, cigarettes given to every enemy soldier as normal ration. He says 1 week's American ration for 800 soldiers exceeded what his entire division received in a month. I have been standing in ration lines since 1942, accepting explanations that food shortages are necessary for military operations. Now I learn the enemy feeds their soldiers abundantly while we starve. What have the sacrifices been for? We are starving to supply an army that cannot match enemy abundance anyway. The Nazis promised that German organization and efficiency would overcome material disadvantage. Klaus's letter proves this was always a lie. We are losing because the enemy simply has more of everything. No amount of organization compensates for having 1/10 the enemy's production."
What German soldiers discovered through K-Rations, and what military analysts would confirm in post-war studies, was that nutrition directly determined combat effectiveness. Well-fed soldiers fought better, marched farther, recovered faster from wounds, and maintained morale under stress. Starving soldiers became progressively less effective, regardless of training or equipment. Dr. Heinrich Krommer, Wehrmacht Medical Corps, submitted a comprehensive nutritional study to Army High Command in February 1945, documenting the combat effectiveness impact of inadequate rations. Study of 4,500 soldiers across 6 divisions reveals direct correlation between caloric intake and combat performance. Soldiers receiving 2,800 plus calories daily. Average march distance, 32 kilometers. Combat effectiveness rating, 85% of 1940 baseline. Wound recovery time, normal. Mental alertness, good. Morale, adequate. Soldiers receiving 1,500 to 2,000 calories daily. Average march distance, 18 kilometers. Combat effectiveness rating, 52% of 1940 baseline. Wound recovery time, 50% longer than normal. Mental alertness, impaired. Morale, poor. Soldiers receiving below 1,500 calories daily. Average march distance, 8 kilometers. Combat effectiveness rating, 31% of 1940 baseline. Wound recovery time, 100% longer. Many wounds do not heal properly. Mental alertness, severely impaired. Difficulty following complex orders. Morale, critically low. Current Wehrmacht ration averages 1,400 calories for frontline troops, 1,100 calories for rear echelon. This places the majority of our forces in the critically impaired nutritional category. By contrast, intelligence indicates American soldiers receive minimum 3,000 calories daily, placing all their forces in optimal performance category. Conclusion: we are fielding an army that is physically incapable of matching enemy performance due to chronic malnutrition. This nutritional deficit cannot be compensated through training, tactics, or morale initiatives. Starving soldiers simply cannot fight effectively against well-fed opponents. The Wehrmacht had effectively crippled itself through inadequate logistics. German soldiers in early 1945 were physically weaker, mentally slower, and emotionally defeated compared to their 1940 counterparts, not because of inferior genetics or training, but because they weren't receiving adequate nutrition. Obergefreiter Richter, after 3 weeks of consuming American rations during the Ardennes offensive, personally experienced the transformation. His war diary entry from January 5, 1945, documented the change. 3 weeks of eating American rations has changed me physically. I have regained 4 kilograms, my strength has returned,
The chronic exhaustion that plagued me since summer has lifted. My thinking is clearer. I didn't realize how severely malnutrition had degraded my capabilities until adequate food reversed the damage. But this makes the situation more depressing, not less. Now I understand we have been fighting at perhaps 50% physical capacity due to starvation, while the Americans fight at full capacity because they eat adequately. This explains why American units, soldier for soldier, consistently outperform us in sustained combat. They are not better soldiers, they are better fed. The offensive is collapsing. American counterattacks are driving us back. Within days, we will return to German rations, 700 calories of sawdust bread and rancid margarine. I will become weak again, exhausted again, mentally impaired again. And the Americans will continue eating their K-rations, maintaining full combat effectiveness while we starve ourselves into defeat.
The K-rations that demoralized German soldiers represented the visible output of an American agricultural and industrial system that had transformed into a war machine of unprecedented scale. In 1940, America's farms had produced primarily for domestic consumption, with some exports. By 1944, American agriculture had increased production by 30% while simultaneously sending 6 million farmers and farm workers into military service or war industries. This seemingly impossible increase came from mechanization, improved farming techniques, and ruthless efficiency. The numbers were staggering. Mechanization revolution. 1940, 1.6 million tractors on American farms. 1944, 2.4 million tractors, 50% increase. Mechanical corn pickers, 110,000 in operation versus 10,000 in 1940. Mechanical cotton harvesters, widespread adoption, previously almost non-existent. Production increases 1940 to 1944. Wheat, plus 40% from 813 million bushels to 1,137 million. Corn, plus 31% from 2.4 billion bushels to 3.1 billion. Beef production, plus 29%. Pork production, plus 38%. Poultry production, plus 47%. Egg production, plus 35%. This increased production occurred while 20% of agricultural workers left farming for military service or war industries. American agriculture achieved what German planners considered impossible: dramatic production increases with fewer workers through mechanization and industrial farming methods. But production was only half the equation. American industry had developed food processing and packaging capabilities that could transform raw agricultural output into shelf-stable military rations deliverable anywhere in the world. Colonel Theodore Whitman, U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps, explained the system in a 1944 operational overview. American military feeding operates as integrated system from farm to foxhole. We contract with 1,200 meat processors, 300 canning facilities, 180 bakeries, and 47 specialized ration assembly plants. These facilities operate 24 hours daily, producing 850,000 complete rations per day, enough to feed 280,000 soldiers for 3 days. The key innovation is standardization and quality control. Every K-ration is identical regardless of which facility produces it. Every can of meat meets identical specifications. Every chocolate bar contains exact caloric content. This standardization allows interchangeable supply. Any ration from any source provides exact nutrition. Compare this to German military feeding, which relies on regional procurement and inconsistent quality. German soldiers in France eat differently than soldiers in Italy or Russia because supply systems are decentralized. Quality varies wildly. Spoilage rates are high because preservation methods are inconsistent. Our system ensures every American soldier, whether in Alaska, North Africa, or the Philippines, receives identical nutrition. This is military logistics as industrial process, not improvisation.
Among the K-ration components that psychologically devastated German soldiers, cigarettes held a unique significance.
Each American K-ration included 4 cigarettes, 12 per day per soldier. By comparison, German soldiers hadn't received regular tobacco rations since mid-1943. The cigarette disparity created an informal economy in combat zones, where American cigarettes became more valuable than German currency. A single American cigarette could purchase items that Reichsmarks could not. Gefreiter Paul Schroeder, 2nd Panzer Division, described the cigarette economy in a February 1945 letter. American cigarettes captured during the offensive have become the real currency in our unit. One Lucky Strike cigarette trades for 2 days' German rations. A full pack of Chesterfields can be exchanged for a week's leave if you find the right sergeant. Men who captured cartons of American cigarettes are wealthy beyond imagination. They trade cigarettes for food, extra rations, better positions in the line. The German cigarette ration, when issued at all, consists of 2 cigarettes per week, of such poor quality they are barely smokable. American soldiers receive 12 quality cigarettes daily and consider this normal. They discard half-smoked cigarettes that we would treasure. I watched a German corporal trade his Iron Cross, earned at Kursk, for 1 carton of captured Lucky Strikes. The cigarettes were more valuable to him than the medal. This is what we have become. The tobacco disparity revealed another dimension of American abundance. While Germany had diverted tobacco cultivation to food production, America maintained cigarette production as military supply priority, recognizing tobacco's importance for morale. American factories produced 300 billion cigarettes annually for military use, enough for 12 per soldier per day for 12 million troops. German economic planners, reviewing captured American supply data, concluded that America could afford to provide non-essential morale items to soldiers because basic necessities, food, ammunition, fuel, were so abundant that military logistics had excess capacity for luxuries. Germany, by contrast, struggled to provide basic necessities and had no capacity for morale items.
Beyond immediate combat effectiveness, chronic malnutrition created a medical crisis in the Wehrmacht that further degraded military capability. Diseases associated with vitamin deficiencies, almost unknown in well-fed armies, became epidemic among German soldiers. Dr. Wilhelm Hartmann, Wehrmacht field hospital physician, documented the medical collapse in his January 1945 medical journal. Our field hospital treats more soldiers for malnutrition-related diseases than combat wounds. Common conditions: night blindness, vitamin A deficiency. 34% of soldiers examined show impaired night vision due to vitamin A deficiency. This makes night operations increasingly difficult. Men literally cannot see in darkness. Scurvy, vitamin C deficiency. 18% show early scurvy symptoms: bleeding gums, loose teeth, slow wound healing. Full scurvy cases increasing weekly. Beriberi, vitamin B1 deficiency. 12% showing symptoms: muscle weakness, nerve damage, mental confusion. Severe cases cannot walk or perform basic tasks. Pellagra, niacin deficiency. 8% showing symptoms: dermatitis, diarrhea, dementia. Several soldiers misdiagnosed as combat stress are actually pellagra victims. General protein deficiency. 67% of examined soldiers show muscle wasting beyond normal combat stress. Bodies are consuming muscle tissue to maintain basic functions. These conditions are rare or non-existent in adequately fed armies. American prisoners we treat show none of these deficiencies. Their rations contain sufficient vitamins and protein. Meanwhile, our own soldiers literally go blind, develop scurvy, and waste away from diseases that simple nutrition would prevent. The Wehrmacht attempted to address vitamin deficiencies through supplements, but the pharmaceutical industry couldn't produce sufficient quantities. By early 1945, vitamin supplements were reserved for elite units and pilots. Infantry received nothing. Richter experienced this personally.
By March 1945, after returning to German rations following the Ardennes offensive, his night vision had deteriorated noticeably. Tasks that were routine in darkness, identifying targets, navigating terrain, recognizing friendly versus enemy soldiers, became difficult or impossible. He wasn't alone. The entire company suffered collective night blindness from vitamin A deficiency. "We are becoming invalids, not from wounds, but from starvation," Richter wrote on March 12, 1945. "Half the company cannot see properly at night. Men's teeth are falling out from scurvy. We suffer chronic diarrhea and stomach problems. This is not combat degradation. This is systematic destruction of army through inadequate supply. We are literally starving to death while trying to fight a war."
The most devastating psychological blow came from German soldiers captured by American forces who were fed U.S. Army rations as prisoners and gained weight in captivity. Unteroffizier Martin Fischer, captured near Bastogne on January 15, 1945, experienced this personally. His account, recorded by American intelligence, illustrated the cruel irony. January 15th, captured by American infantry. Weighed approximately 58 kilograms, 128 pounds, I am 178 centimeters tall, 5'10". Severely malnourished by any standard. January 20th, American prison camp, Belgium. Fed 2 hot meals daily plus K-rations. More food than I received in previous month as German soldier. Americans seem puzzled that we eat so desperately. They don't understand we are starving. February 1st, medical examination. American doctor says I have gained 3 kilograms, 6.6 pounds, in 2 weeks. Scurvy symptoms, bleeding gums, have stopped. Energy levels improving. The doctor is shocked that German Army field soldiers in my condition. Says I was clinically malnourished and combat ineffective. February 15th, gained total 6 kilograms, 13.2 pounds, in 1 month. I am stronger, healthier, and better fed as American prisoner than I was as German soldier. This is the final indignity. I am better cared for by the enemy than by my own country. American intelligence officers systematically debriefed German prisoners about ration quality and supply conditions. The reports painted a devastating picture of Wehrmacht logistics collapse. Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, U.S. Army Intelligence, compiled prisoner testimonies in a February 1945 report. Interview subjects, 247 German POWs, ranks from private to major, captured December 1944 to January 1945. Ration adequacy. 94% report receiving less than 1,500 calories daily for past 6 months. 76% report chronic hunger. 51% report experiencing vitamin deficiency symptoms like night blindness, bleeding gums, and weakness. Weight loss. Average weight loss since June 1944 was 11.3 kilograms, 24.9 pounds. 23% of prisoners are clinically malnourished by American Army medical standards. Psychological impact. 89% state that inadequate rations severely impacted morale. 67% state that knowledge of American supply abundance through captured materials convinced them Germany would lose war. Most significant finding, 78% of prisoners have gained weight after 2 to 4 weeks in American custody, despite receiving POW rations, which are 20% reduced from American soldier rations. German soldiers are literally healthier and better fed as American prisoners than as German soldiers. This represents complete systemic failure of German military logistics. An army that cannot feed its soldiers adequately is an army that has already lost, regardless of tactical or strategic considerations.
By late January 1945, the Ardennes offensive had completely collapsed. German forces retreated eastward, abandoning all captured territory. Among the multiple factors causing the defeat, American numerical superiority, Allied air dominance, German fuel shortages, inadequate rations played a decisive role. Hauptmann Werner Steiner, company commander who had overseen distribution of captured American rations in December, submitted his final report on January 28th. Company strength, 64 men remaining from original 140. Losses, 31 killed, 45 wounded or missing. However, combat effectiveness would have been zero even without casualties due to nutritional status. From January 15 to 28, company received only emergency rations, 200 grams bread per day, no hot meals, no supplementary items. Men are too weak for sustained combat. Average soldier can march maximum 8 kilometers before exhaustion. Hand-to-hand combat impossible. Men lack physical strength. Medical officer reports 41 men, 64% of company, show malnutrition symptoms requiring treatment. 23 men have night blindness severe enough to impair combat effectiveness. 12 men have early scurvy. All men have chronic diarrhea from inadequate nutrition. For comparison, same men in late December, after consuming American rations for 2 weeks, were capable of 30-kilometer marches and sustained combat. The difference was nutrition, not morale or training. Conclusion: this company is combat ineffective due primarily to starvation. We possess weapons, ammunition, and fighting spirit, but lack the physical capacity to employ them effectively. An army of starving men cannot defeat well-fed opponents, regardless of other factors. The pattern was repeated across German forces. Units that had briefly achieved adequate nutrition through captured American supplies experienced dramatic combat effectiveness increases, then collapsed again when returned to German rations. The cycle proved that logistics, not tactics or courage, determined combat outcomes. Obergefreiter Richter survived the Ardennes offensive and retreated into Germany. His final diary entry about the K-rations, written on February 3, 1945, captured the complete psychological transformation. We are back to German rations, 700 calories of sawdust bread and spoiled margarine. The American rations we consumed in December seem like a fever dream. Did we really eat chocolate daily? Real coffee? Canned meat with visible chunks? Those 3 weeks of adequate nutrition showed me what we could be: strong, alert, capable soldiers. Now we are starving shadows, barely able to march, too weak for sustained fighting. The Americans didn't defeat us through superior tactics. They defeated us by simply maintaining their soldiers' nutrition while we starved ours. I used to believe German discipline and fighting spirit could overcome material disadvantage. The K-rations proved this was always a lie. A starving soldier with excellent training is still a starving soldier. He cannot march as far, fight as hard, or recover as quickly as a well-fed soldier with mediocre training. We are losing this war because the enemy can feed 12 million soldiers adequately while fighting on 5 continents, and we cannot feed 6 million soldiers adequately while defending our own borders. Everything else, tactics, weapons, morale, is secondary to this mathematical reality.